In our talks or in this faith education series, what we're trying to do is speak for roughly 30 minutes, give or take, answer a couple of questions, and then have that group discussion that is focusing on the practical. We've heard this talk. How do we put it into practice? How can we ourselves in 21st century Australia put the content of this talk into practice? One thing to hear about the Trinity. How do we live? What difference does that make in our life? It's one thing to hear about Christology, about the saints, about monasticism, about whatever you like. How does it change our life? And that's the, I guess, the second half hour. So the first half hour, the talk, then quick Q&A, 3 questions tops, and then a discussion point. How can we put this into practice? And then we come back, share final questions, and that's our night. And so when we look at the topic of evangelism, it comes within a broader subset. I was talking about missions with someone. When I was talking about missions, we're used to hearing about this in terms of mission statements. When we say missionary, that means something completely not businessy. But should it? But should it? So the word missio is from to send. One would send a missive to someone. One sends a communique to someone. And when you're on this mission, your missio, you have been sent. Businesses will create a mission statement. This is what we are doing. This is the direction in which we go. We're different. That doesn't mean that we don't have mission. That means that we don't get to choose our mission. We don't get to choose our mission because it was given to us by God. If the CEO decides everything, well, so much more does our God who gave us everything worthwhile. And he gave us a pretty blunt mission. Go ye therefore to everywhere, make disciples, baptize, teach. And in this I am with you. You can read the exact quote at the end of Matthew 28, verses 16 through 20 is the full thing. That's what we read at every baptism service. Every time someone is baptized, that's the reading over them. There's no Bible bingo or anything. It's you're sent for a purpose. You too have been baptized. And now go ye therefore. We have church services for a relatively limited time each week. If we take out all the hours that we're sleeping in a week and bits and bobs, let's say we have 100 hours that we can be doing something with, and let's say we go to all of the services that are on the weekend, and being in Rokor, they're both a couple of hours long. That's 4 hours, maybe 5. If the singing is slow or if it's more comprehensively served. 5 out of 100. That on its own isn't a pass mark. What then do we do with that 5? What do we do with that 5 to have Christ in all of our lives? We have a missio. We have something for which we are sent. In Orthodox missiology, there's a number of things that are included here. There's catechism, there's discipleship, there's church planting, there's being sent by a bishop. That's wildly important. We don't just take the initiative. We don't just take the initiative. Re-evangelism, charitable works, and there's others beside as well. Evangelism is one of those that we're much more comfortable about in the Synaxarion than we are in our sight. Mostly because the word itself got hijacked along the way. When we think of evangelism, I might even go around the people that are in front of me. When I say, what's an evangelistic action that you have seen? I reckon I'm going to get one of two responses. So what pops to mind first from anyone here? Yes. Yes. Going door to door, knock, knock, knock. Can I interrupt your day?
Anything out Bibles or other materials and scriptural.
And like handing them out to passers-by. That one wasn't one that I was thinking of. It's true. That is one. That's much better than the other one I was thinking of. What's the other stereotype I'm thinking of? There we go. Yelling at people is usually how it comes across. You know, we're insiders, so we call it street preaching. If you're not an insider, it's just some guy yelling at you, and it's at you, not with, not someone you trust, not a friend, a supporter, or a parent. At you. If you want a famous example in Australia, Rundle Mall. You can Google it if you like. They set up speakers, and it became legendary because it happened for a number of years. Yeah, I don't know the success rates, but tonight we're going to be talking about a more excellent way. When we look to how it is that a person is formed, that a person is connected with Christ, well, the first thing that we should be looking at is discipleship. How is it that we become disciples of Jesus? That's a process. It's a very long process. If you look at the things that parishes do, most of them fall under the discipleship line. That's a good thing. Not good if it's all, but it's good if it's a huge proportion, even the majority. There's no point for looking for conversions to then not sanctify people, because it's all about being close to Christ. So discipleship is wildly important. It's the foundation in which anything stands. Go the step above that. You've got catechism and incorporation. So this is how people are brought into a community. It works exactly the same. Well, that's not true. It works in a similar way, whether it's someone who's moving cities and they're finding a new church, they still need to be incorporated into the community. If someone is off the streets, they've walked in, they've thought this is a beautiful place, and they've got to be accepted as part of the community too. They've got to be taught. What is this about? It can't be about what I particularly like Highland Church liturgics and or the bells and smells, so to speak. It's got to be deeper than that. If they're not taught that Christ is risen to save you from the broken world that we live in, something's missing there. It's called catechism. What's the step above that? Hospitality. Welcoming people. Saying, how you going? What brought you here today? We're glad to have you. Here, have a coffee. And what comes before that? Anything there is falling under this umbrella that I'm going to call evangelism. Some of it will happen directly through us, and some of it will happen as a consequence of things that we've done. There's 4 basic types that I'm going to talk about tonight. 4 basic types. Presence. I've put apologetics in next. I'm not terribly comfortable with where that should go, but I'm just going to leave it there for now. Presence, apologetics, relational or relationships or relations, and then proclamation. Presence, apologetics, relational, and proclamation. How is it that each of these can be used? I should preface If someone is using this as a guide, a how-to of what to do, I would actually advocate spending a year on each one of those levels. I have many, many more details that I would talk about if I was approached by a group, for example, but a year on each makes foundations secure. So hopefully, by the time we've gotten to evangelizing by presence, we've already been around and functioning and making disciples, incorporating people, being hospitable, catechizing people for a few years now. We've had some experience. Now, how can we do this presence evangelism? Now, we're actually quite familiar with this concept, I think. Those of us raised in the church will look to the beautiful buildings that we have. And a traditionally constructed Orthodox church is a thing of beauty. Don't believe me? Look at some of them. Well constructed, standing the test of centuries, while also proclaiming the beauty of not only of creation, the world around us, but what we are able to add, what we are able to make and give to others. So evangelism by presence is what we are doing, how we're able to welcome others by existing in the way that we do. You may later notice, by the way, that this is a bit Venn diagramming. There's going to be overlap, and that's okay. So, talking about evangelism tonight and the 4 different types. So presence, how can this be done? We don't just have buildings. We beautify them. We have these be demonstrations that the best that we have to offer is for God. The best that we have, the first fruits, is for God. What incense do we use in our church services? Do we use any old thing? Do we use stuff that has probably been there for 40 years and we dug it up, it's kind of dusty now and barely has a smell to it, but this is good enough, right? No. And if it was good enough, that would say something about us, that any old thing was good enough. But if we're giving the first fruits, then we're going to look for what is the best that we can offer. Now, sometimes that's really subjective. Do you get Byzantium incense, or do you get desert flowers? Do you get roses? Some of it's going to be about our own preferences, but we make the effort to offer the best that we have. Likewise, wherever we serve, we're serving in the church choir. Is any old thing good enough? Or do we offer our best? Because this matters. This goes, you'll notice that, this overlaps with discipleship, which we talked about much earlier, because discipleship should have these things as well. Us living it out and having other people see it, this is one of the forms of evangelism. Where this often comes in, where this is often considered, is where we're told to be fishers of men, and instead we wait for the fish to jump into the boat. Sure, but some do. And when they do, we want them to not jump out. We want them to go, this is awesome. This is awesome in its traditional sense as well. If this is how we ought to be before God. I remember very early in my own journey with the Orthodox faith, there was a trip that we took to a church down the Gold Coast, and there was a lady. I never got her name. I don't even know if I saw her ever again. But the way that she was during that service spoke volumes to me. Couldn't understand a word, but I understood her. Now, she probably has no idea. I expect that she would have no idea that I was even there. And that'll be the case for us as well. We're just praying. We're just worshiping in the best way that we can with whatever we've got to offer. And maybe we don't even have that much to offer, but it's whatever we've got, and that's what we're going to give. And we won't know the impact that we'll make on others. But nonetheless, we have communicated this good message by our actions. There's evangelism by presence. You know, one other thing, website. I'm aware of how trite that sounds, but a lot of our lives are spent on devices of one kind or another. Can I get a show of hands here? How many found out about this class or our parish through Google or some other search engine, some other internet thingo? Four out of six. I'm curious to see the online group because I'm guessing that will prove my point even better than, well, it was 4.5 out of 6. And if you're talking, oh, and the 2 that didn't, both raised in the church from birth. I'm going to go ahead and guess for our new visitor. Whereas for people from the outside, people who perhaps haven't been in church all their life every Sunday, the internet is the main way that we find places. Remember these old evangelism books from the late 80s, and they'd be like, make sure you get an ad at the yellow pages that I'm smoking away. But the principle's still good. The principle of be where people are looking for you. That's a website. That's probably still Facebook, Instagram. That's probably Google Ads. And many other places besides. The details, I look forward to what you have to say at our small group conversation at the end. Where else should we be? Just by our presence, just by the fact that we are living as Orthodox Christians, other people are therefore being introduced to the Church that Christ founded, who are being therefore introduced to the Lord who loves them, just by nothing else than being a Christian full time. That's presence. The second one, I'm not going to talk about very much because it's important, but it's also kind of distinct, and that's apologetics. So if I was going to counsel a community in how should you be expanding in those ways, of expanding the ministries of discipleship and catechism, incorporation and hospitality, and then evangelism by presence and apologetics, I probably want these two to happen at roughly the same time so that you're prepared for the people that are coming in. Apologetics are important. They're important to have, mostly as a resource. We're told in Scripture to always have an answer for the joy that is within you. Not for the aggression, not for the argumentativeness, not for someone who's wrong on the internet. An answer for the joy that is within you. One of the fruits of the Spirit, that Christ is risen should fill us with joy. What is the reason for this? And sometimes we'll have the answer, especially if we've been asking the same questions. If a person was previously I want to pick a particular belief system, but I don't want to single out a belief system, and I'm getting contradictory goals here. But ism, just work with me here. If you were there and you came out of that and you're speaking to someone else who's coming out of that, you're probably going to have a lot of similar questions. That's great. And if it's someone who's coming from a different background, you may have some knowledge. You may have some ignorance about the questions that they're asking or why they're asking those questions. And that's okay too, because no one person can know everything. And that's fine. Do you know where to go to look for the answers? Do you know who to talk to get some of the answers? Hopefully everyone in front of me can answer yes. But you should have a way of getting resources, and also a person who, in short, is there to know the answers or to find the answers. You should have both of those things, both the resources and the person. And that will do for us tonight on apologetics. We talked previously about presence. The next that is specifically about evangelism is relationships. And by this, I just mean people that you know. I realized when I showed this to someone that they thought that I meant relationships as in progressing towards marriage. That's not what I mean at all. That's there's words for that, and they're not terribly kind. But people that you know, the people that you know are going to be the people that you want to talk to, or the people that want to talk to you, because they have seen your life. So we talked about presence before being really important. They've seen your life. They've seen the difference that being part of church has made. They've seen the difference that that prayer has made, that fasting has made, scripture reading, stewardship, even the sacraments. All of these things have made. That's a powerful testimony. It won't just stop there though. So some people will see your life and glorify God. That's fantastic. Most won't. In practice, most won't. And that's okay too, because we wouldn't expect people to. When we talk about evangelism, generally, well, we're talking about speaking. The Apostle Paul is quite specific. How do people hear about the gospel? Because someone said something. That doesn't have to be being in the middle of Rundle Mall or Queen Street Mall or whichever mall. It can be, would you like to come along? This has really changed my life. When I was going through what you're going through, this really helped me. Why don't you give it a shot? Did you know that there was a reason for existing? And it's powerful with the people who know you, who know that you're struggling and striving. If it's all about you, you've done the wrong thing. Because it's about the one to whom you pray. So your individual falls are, well, we kind of expect that. We don't like it, but we expect it. They're able to see that you're trending upwards. If you're trending upwards, honestly, that's better than most. So that's the relational form of evangelism. And the last one that I'm going to talk about is proclamation. Now, we just spent a little bit of time talking about how the two of the stereotypes of evangelism that we've got, two of the three responses were this form from someone you didn't know. It's not that this is bad. but it's not always good. So it has to be done well. It has to be done well because you're talking to people who you don't know and don't know you. You've got to build those connections out of nothing. We've got examples of preachers who did this. The Acts of the Apostles gives us quite a number. Most of the epistles will be talking from the apostle to the church or a subset of it. The church in a particular place or the church general. Occasionally it's to an individual, but this is insider documents, people who have already chosen Christ. Acts talks about what First Peter, then Paul primarily, what they were doing, where they were going. The most striking examples of it were firstly in, I think it's Acts 2, where Pentecost occurs. This great miracle. And everyone's going, what is this? In various permutations. Like I said, if you want the original, read Acts 2. And Peter stands up and says, this is a fulfillment of prophecy. This is what you have been waiting for so long. That your Messiah is finally here. And on that day, I think it was 2,000 were baptized. Now, thousands in a single day, it's rather extraordinary. Tells us that it is possible. Not automatic, but possible. What we're more used to, Peter was speaking to a people when this was the first that they heard about Christ, but they had heard about a Christ. They'd heard about the Messiah, because that's what Christ means, Messiah. They'd heard about a Messiah who was coming at some point. They were prepared. Paul, at the Areopagus, he preaches. And what does he do? He doesn't tell them, you're all wrong and your idolatry makes me sick. He doesn't say anything of the sort. He says, he praises the good. I can see that you're a pious people. I can see that you're a devout people. There is a God that you say that you don't know about, and I'm going to tell you about him. He's amazing. You've got to hear this. And he went, I can't recite or do justice with a paraphrase. The structure is impeccable. He went through and taught about Jesus and linked it back with their poets that they were familiar with. He was using their culture, what they had been raised with, and working that into what it is to be a follower of Christ. Now, you can't dodge some things, and neither did the Apostle Paul. He weaved it as well as he could, teaching Christianity and linking that with the best of Greek philosophy of the time. And then, this is where it leads to. It leads to the cross and the resurrection. And they say, oh, good one. We'll hear from you another time. Even there. And he was compelled to do it. What is this thing that you're saying? Was the introductory words to his speech. That's a hell of an MC. The MC goes, now what are you talking about? It's not a great introduction. He's really coming from behind the eight ball there. That's what he delivers. That is the kind of proclamation that we can get behind. When we are asked, when we are able to offer, it's not to impose upon the other, because we can't. We give an invitation, not because we're amazing. It's not because of me that a person should be Christian. At best, I get to be the conduit. At best, I get to be out of the way what God is doing and has done and will do. At its best, that's where it's at. And so rather than I've saved so many people, instead maybe we get to play a role. Maybe we'll get to play a role that we don't even know. We invite. The archetype for that, consider it being a beggar telling another beggar where to find bread. We often get accused for arrogance because of our what's called ecclesiology. And we believe that, yes, this is the church that Jesus founded. It's continued through to today, and we are that church that Jesus made. But it's not because of us. The one thing that it is not because of us. He said yes. He said, yes, we want to be part of that church that he founded, part of what God made to save humanity. And share that invitation freely given to all peoples, all persons and all peoples. Maybe we get to share that invitation. The opportunities come. The opportunities come all by themselves. So often, just through living the Christian life, just through being honest about what's happening. People will talk to us and say, how was your weekend? We can be honest. People will say, how come you're not eating that? Particularly at Christmas, around this time of year, during Lent. How come you're not eating that? How come you don't go out on Saturday nights? Why are you celebrating on the 7th of January? Why is your Easter weird? I mean, late. Either one, actually. We have the opportunity not to pretend that we're the Apostle Paul, to share what it is that we have received. Maybe we get to invite someone else to share it with us, so that we have someone else on that path to heaven. That's what it's all about. That's what evangelism is all about. It's sharing so that others journey with us on this path towards heaven. It comes back to our mission to make disciples, not to rack up numbers of baptisms. That's not my KPI, and it shouldn't be anyone else's. To make disciples, and those disciples to be made saints of God's kingdom. I feel like I've talked through what is evangelism, what are the 4 different types: presence, apologetics, kind of awkwardly on the side, relations, and proclamations. How it is that we put this into practice, I'm very much hoping that that either from previous thoughts or during tonight's talk, we've had the opportunity to consider, how can we do this? What's the best way in which we can do this? For some, it's going to be, how can we be ready to do this? I think in a number of places, being ready is a necessary step. So that when we invite people, we're inviting them to a Christ-following community. Then, only then, will we have people that want to be part of that Christ-loving community. Well, our questions for tonight, our discussion questions for tonight, that is, are going to be on presence and that relational form. How it is that just by presence, whether it's church buildings or music or art or iconography, because they're not really the same, or by just living out the Christian life, We can be therefore sharing, therefore having that good news of the Christ's incarnation and resurrection shared with others. And then how it is, in particular, that we can be sharing these with those who are near to us, or people that we might think, and who is my neighbor? People that we interact with. Before we get to those questions, do we have any questions tonight on, particularly on things that might help us for those two group questions?
Question.
Yeah.
On my way here, we spoke about Christmas and the different dates, and one thing this live stream was I guess the wishing, say Merry Christmas on a day that is the Merry Christmas, as kind of find myself hesitating or being unsure of how to respond in those situations, because why that's full understanding, but each day, when we return to the calendar has some significance. To wish, Christmas at an earlier day is, in a way, is not right, but then at the same time, I spoke about evangelizing. There's there's a time and a place, and I don't ever wish to hurt or offend someone through some self-righteousness.
And it's better that they're celebrating the birth of Christ even if it's 13 days out from us. It's better that they're celebrating it than not celebrating it. In the way that I would be thinking about it is, when you tell someone happy birthday, well, it's their birthday. So when you're saying Merry Christmas, if you want to make it clear, you can say Merry Christmas to you, because it is their Christmas. And cool. And for us, well, it's within the Advent fast. It is in that Christmas time period. So yeah, if I was going to say okay, if you don't feel terribly comfortable with just saying Merry Christmas and pretending that it's the same, then Merry Christmas to you is appropriate and slightly distinct. So maybe give that one a go and see how it works. Other questions? Sounded like it was half a question. Right. Is it roughly the same kind of answer? And one online, what do you do about evangelizing a baptized person who has left the Orthodox Church? There's a lot that could be said. But the way that I'm going to get out of this one is by saying that that's, strictly speaking, re-evangelism. And so it's not a simple matter of presence or being relational or proclamation, although these things can be involved. After all, the re-evangelism part does imply that, well, it's kind of related. Your apologetics is probably going to feature much more clearly. Direct proclamation probably won't do too much. It's going to be, and presence will do nothing. It's going to be apologetics and being relational. That will be the things that you'll be focusing on. Because they left for a reason. How is it that we can be evangelizing by presence? These are things that we've thought up. How is it that by the sheer fact of our existence as Orthodox Christians, that we can be sharing what it is that we have received? How can we have a presence that invites people in? How can we share the faith through who we are, what we have, and what we do? Yes,
Demonstrating or giving our transformation of Christ.
demonstrating our transformation
Yes, through its beauty.
through its beauty.
Yes.
Yeah, I think both of those work. So demonstrating our own transformation and also demonstrating its beauty, and combined, of course. I think that's a really, really good thing. Person online, I just talk about what I did on the weekend, tell people I went to church on Sunday. If they want to know more, they usually ask. The coffee and the nice people were fantastic when we walked in on Sunday. So coffee hour, really important. Got a suggestion to create a t-shirt, which can work. What else did we have in person? Oh, sorry? Symbols? Yeah. Got a cross on the outside of your person. I know that mine is big and chunky, but you know, I have another cross here as well, which much smaller, obviously, but it can also be worn. But be warned, firstly, it's not jewelry. If you're going to wear it so that it's displayed, you better back that up. Just like having a bumper sticker. Better back that up.
Icons in plain sight.
Icons in plain sight, yeah. Or in your car, for that matter, for those who are driving. Having a icon doesn't have to be huge, like yay big is fine. But having your faith in plain sight, because that's exactly what you'd expect if you're living your faith all week. Another response, when they ask about Christmas, I mentioned mine's in January, and then we can talk about, you know, oh, Orthodox Christian, this is what we believe. And usually the answer is curiosity. They're asking, what's that? Not to put you on the spot. They're saying, what's that? Because they might have heard about it vaguely on some news report. That's about it. They might have heard about ethnic festivals, and that's it. And you're actually a person who knows the answer, what's Orthodox. Icon pendants and using, I guess, typical churchly phrases, but churchly phrases that make sense in the context or that you then explain can be a thing, like, because that's the presence of, this is what we do, this is how we honor those who are proposed. We cross ourselves in various times. We say grace before eating and so on. What else did we have from question 1 in person? Yeah. Posting quotes. Now it depends on which social media you're referring to, but I'm thinking Instagram. You have the picture, you have the saint's name, and the words underneath, the quote underneath, or something like that. Different platforms do it in different ways, of course, but that can be a means of sharing, particularly when it's not just random saint said random thing. Because if you see be the change you want to see in the world, do you care? I mean, sometimes maybe, but generally probably not. But if there's a big issue, let's say racism is an issue, or racism comes up as an issue. We know that, well, we are unique is the wrong word, but uncommon in having a society with many cultures, many ethnicities. I think that Australia at its best is exactly that. We're all not just occupying the same landmass, but that we are thriving together. So if I'm wanting to really live that out, that's going to make a big difference in my life. Secondly, if that is challenged for some reason, let's say the Cronulla riots happen tomorrow, then posting the quote from St. Justin Martyr saying, you know, before we used to kill each other and now we're united in Christ. This has brought peace to our lives. That's the difference that it's made to us. Then that will get many more eyes than some random quote because it happens to be the Tuesday of the day of the week, and that's what we always post on a Tuesday. What else did we have? Visitors will ask about our icon corner. Crossing ourselves before a meal. And how many people notice that we cross ourselves the other way? You know, the correct way. But that it is different from what they usually see on TV. That we're accountable, that we admit we get things wrong, we have a different understanding of sin. Anything else for question 1 that we had here in person?
Not really answer the question. How do you go about offering prayers to people?
2 people? What do you mean?
Like, say if someone tells you like a part-time, if you say to them, oh, well, pray.
Yeah. Is it all right if we pray together? Is it all right if I pray for you? I'd like to offer prayers. Is that okay?
Yeah.
How does it? No, stop then it's questions. Yeah, because I just want to make sure that accidentally use people that comes out
You know why it doesn't come off as Pharisaic? So I'm not sure how much this is getting across on our microphone. The question of if someone comes to us with a difficulty, how can we offer our prayers? And so saying, ask them, speak with them, saying, is it all right? Can we pray together? Or I would like to pray for you. Is that okay? Things like that. That's usually a positive thing. And they can say no, or they can say, if you want, do it over there. Any of those are fine, because you should be praying for them anyway. But praying together with them is there is something special about that. They're involved in that process. Can't remember if there was something I was going to continue on with. Probably not. Yeah, should be praying for them anyway. So even if they say no, you can still pray for them, separately. My dad's going through cancer and I don't want anyone to pray for them. That's nice. I'm still going to. You may not be in the room at the time, but I'm still going to because that's what I do. And if you really think that I'm praying to no one, well, why do you care? So it'd be a very odd thing to say, I want you to not pray for this. That would be oddly antagonistic. Right. Especially if they're telling you about their problems.
So I in my early years, I have come across an issue like that.
Anything else for question 1 with presence? Let's go to question 2. How can we be sharing our faith with the people that we know? Offering being happy to answer questions. I think that was one that we came to over here. Just if you've made clear, I go to church on Sundays. I'm trying to live the Christian life. That may be it for another hour, week, month, year, decade. And when they have questions, they know who to come to. You may, just because you put a seed somewhere, doesn't mean that you know when it's going to sprout. It certainly won't sprout on our timetable. Yeah, I think that we've had a very good example of a bad way to share the gospel, because from the sounds of it, it came across terribly to you, and that's how do we invite? We don't impose. We don't expect that the other person will receive our prayer. We don't have any expectations, and it's not all them anyway. That we are praying to Christ, well, he's the one that accepts our prayer, or theoretically not, but it's not the other person. Relational?
Yeah,
Mhm.
do it honestly.
Mhm.
You know how anytime, like when I first, started, I had like a plan. You know, I can't really accept it. Like, I'm gonna just this one and then straight up, I'm gonna get going. Yeah, and then it'll backfire. Straight up. And as I was, it's over. Pretty easy to say that. It's not.
We've got a few others for talking to family about confession and communion, and talking about liturgy and the choir and the beauty of churches and seeing what it's all about. Being upfront about one's faith. Going with people to church. There was a preschool, I think Father John Braun, who's the one who said it and I heard it. He probably wasn't unique in this. 100% of the people that you bring to church will come to church. You want to look for statistics. 100% of the people in the backseat of your car will come to church. Well, I'm not getting it for my Uber driver. Inviting people and offering to pick them up can, you're looking to remove as many boundaries as possible. Other things for number 2, that relational mode, where we're inviting the people who we know by name. Positive actions that are contrary to those that typified our life before conversion. Small actions like wearing the cross and saying something can lead to more things. If they want to engage, that's so much more. It's not all on us. Just because seed falls somewhere doesn't mean that a plant will grow. If someone's sick, then we'll say that we will pray for them. I will finish with one thing. So much of this is just about listening. We're so tempted to make it about what can I say? What's the answer that I can have? How am I going to respond to that question that they haven't even thought of, let alone asked? What if I'm not? Well, we can listen. And at some point, maybe, there may be something that they say, and you go, you know what, I've got an answer for that gaping hole that you have, for that missing link, for that hole. It helped me when I had the same gap. But you won't get there without that process of listening. Sometimes for a little bit, sometimes for a long time. Being there for people, listening to what they have to say, until they themselves are ready for your response. It's easy to get into early too. You're like, yeah, I know what the solution is. It doesn't matter if they don't feel that you've heard them. And even worse if you get it wrong. You're like, no, actually the story goes wildly this way. Oh. So I could have helped from this angle too, but now I spoke too early and injected myself into the other person's problem instead of being there when they wanted the solution. So much is just about listening and then pointing the way. It really is as simple as that. How it is that we can be a light in darkness and a beacon for those on the outside. Any final questions? I will take 3 as a result of our conversations tonight. 3 or less. Not seeing anyone typing, but then again, I can never see anyone typing on the Zoom teleconference by definition. If this was Discord, I could see you typing, but not here. No other questions? I look forward to this being put into practice. I look forward to, after it's put into practice, then getting more questions. Because if it's put into practice, I guarantee other questions will come. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. Let's conclude. We'll sing our concluding prayer, and then we'll turn off the Zoom, and that's us for the night. It is truly to bless the earth and the world. And the blessing that was blameless and all good not. Without corruption, there is perfect God. The very time consider we Thank you all. We'll see you in church.